This forecast update effective around 2:30 Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, September 18th, 2013. And just to reiterate what we talked about in our last forecast update, in case you missed it, this is the time of the year that we shift our focus away from the West African coast and the Cape Verde season back over closer to home and watching for homegrown development via cold fronts dropping in towards the southeast. And since our last update several days ago, we've had a new invest pop up. It's 95LINVEST, which is now crossing the Yucatan Peninsula. You can see the area of low pressure that's associated with the 95LINVEST right in here, getting ready to move into the Bay of Campeche as the afternoon progresses. Now, we've decided not to do any updates on it the last couple of days based on the fact that it looks like it's going to be hanging around here, just like Ingrid did, until the next front gets geared up and moves into the Gulf of Mexico to sweep this up towards the north and northeast. And we're going to show you some the global forecast system model run, the latest one. And we want you to keep in mind when we do show you that model that the forecast models this time of year, in our opinion, over the years since we've been forecasting, that outside of 72 hours, the models become less reliable. And we just want you to keep that in mind because we've already seen how the models have changed over the last 72 hours on what they were forecasting for versus what they're forecasting now. So keep that in mind. The models are going to change. What we show you today may not necessarily be what they're going to show us tomorrow, but we do have time to watch this. So here's 95LINVEST moving into the Bay of Campeche. There was some moderate convection building up this morning, but some strong northwest wind shear moving through the central Gulf of Mexico is shearing the convection apart. Now, we'll show you the thunderstorm color curve to show you what's happening there. And as you can see, the deeper blood red or black, you can see how that's waned as the afternoon has progressed. National Hurricane Center still gives it a high chance, at 70% chance of development, and we do see convection now just starting to fire up over here in the Bay of Campeche. So we're going to be watching this over the next 24 to 48 hours to see if it can get its act together. But as you can see, most of the convection now is getting pushed off towards the northeast, trailing along behind that front that just dropped in into Florida. Now, here's the front that is going to be moving in that we're going to be watching. Now, you're probably wondering, well, wow, you're way up here in the northwest section of the country in here, and you can see the frontal boundary right in here starting to develop. Now, what the models have been suggesting is that another area of low pressure, which could be this right here, is going to dip down towards the panhandle, and we're going to have two areas of low pressure, one over here in the western Gulf of Mexico, and then one over here that's going to be approaching the panhandle. Those two could either combine or one could dissipate and the other one become the main feature. But that's what the models are suggesting at the moment, so that's what we're going to be watching. What the models had suggested was that the area of low pressure that was going to be in here, the Bay of Campeche, was also going to ride the rim of the Gulf of Mexico, come over here, move up to the north, and then off towards the northeast. Now, it does look like there's going to be a big rain event for the southeast states coming up. The last thing South Florida needs is more rain, and boy, have they been getting it. I really hate to see that they get more rain with the condition of the Okeechobee, Lake Okeechobee, and the current Army Corps of Engineers decision to release the overflow water into the Indian River. It is a total mess down there. And unfortunately, I think their hands were tied because the only way they could prevent dike failure would be to release the water. Now, at this particular point, we really need a strong hurricane over here off the South Florida coast to disperse all of that stuff. But the last thing they need is more rain to fill the lake back up. But looking at the latest wind shear analysis, you can see that there's strong wind shear up in here towards the northern panhandle or northern Gulf Coast and through the central Gulf of Mexico and along the front as it extends out here towards the Atlantic. And the only favorable area for tropical development at the moment is in here in the Bay of Campeche. Now, the environmental conditions are forecast to become quite a bit more favorable over the next couple of days. And when we look at the tropical development favorability forecast model, you'll see that in here right now, you can see that the blue hatched areas are the areas that are favorable for development. And as we progress through 24 hours, then 36 hours, then 48 hours, you can see that it becomes more and more favorable over in the western Gulf of Mexico. When we get into 60 and 72 hours, it also lifts north in there, and then it's almost the entire Gulf of Mexico, including the northeast Gulf of Mexico, that becomes favorable for development. So there's a pause for some concern here that we could get a tropical storm in the Gulf of Mexico depending on the exact track that 95LINVEST decides to take. Now, looking at the latest global forecast model, you can see that the area of low pressure, now this map starts off tomorrow for Thursday, so it's got 1,008 millibar low pressure in here in the Bay of Campeche. And as we walk you through the model run, you can see that Thursday afternoon, it shifts towards the west, towards the Mexican coast, and then it dissipates a little bit on Friday. And then on Friday afternoon, it starts to try to pulse back. And then by the time we get into Sunday, now here's that other area of low pressure that is what we talked about along the front. Now, in previous model runs a day or two ago, they actually had these two features closer together. And you're going to see as we get into Monday, it really moves the area of low pressure that was in the Bay of Campeche now up here towards South Carolina, but it also leaves another area of low pressure still remaining down here in the Bay of Campeche. When we get into Tuesday, this area of low pressure that's over now the Outer Banks moves up towards the northeast, and on Wednesday, we get an OBX low that starts to set up. Now, there's some cause for concern because the front's probably going to leave this behind, and we've got high pressure building in up here across the northeast. We could get this OBX low to sit here. Now, what that's going to mean is going to mean some large increasing surf, especially if it drifts out away from the coast, back down in here towards northeast Florida. We've got some big northeast wind chop, or some decent sized northeast wind chop with some Humberto swell right now. So it does look like we're going to get into an extended period of surf along the southeast U.S. coast. Now, when we get, I'm going to advance this to Thursday, and as you can see on Thursday, it moves it off away from the coast. We've got a tight northeast wraparound on the backside of this area of low pressure, so it looks like a very good northeaster setting up for the folks along the northeast Atlantic states along the coast. Now, that's what it's looking like now for at the moment, guys. Stay tuned for the next update.